Well, I just thought I'd go through some of the bits that we've done today. It's been I say we because my old boss Mike pops up once every 2 weeks or so just to give me a helping hand and keep his hand in. Plus, his wise knowledge is always very helpful. So before Mike turns up, I'm just starting to do some work on this Panix TX42L E6B, which is a very nice Panasonic smart TV from about 10 years ago now that refuses to come on. It's got the one blink code. And I just thought to share a little story with you. And in a funny sort of way, I may be calling these videos a day in the life of, but it's absolutely impossible to put, well, today in particular, into one video, even though some of the repairs will only take 10 or 15 minutes, which means 2 minutes on camera. But I shall do this one, which will be the longest, and there'll be a couple of short ones. But the couple of short ones you should be interested in because you've already seen me start the diagnosis process on some of those. So you'll be interested how we finish. Plus, if you saw me repair, or fail to repair, or give up on the repair of the 55-inch Panasonic yesterday, then make sure you watch the two little small follow-ups I do later on today, or they may come out during the course of the weekend, but I hope to get them up tonight, because one of them is connected to that 55-inch that I did yesterday. Life is full of coincidences. Anyway, this is a 42-inch. It's from a local young lady in town, and I've been waiting for a set of backlights to come through. I normally buy my backlights from China. I have no problem with buying them from China as long as you get used to a certain seller, which obviously, since I've been doing this for quite some time now, I have. I always think I get a good service and quality backlights. A lot of my colleagues, though, rely on, and I'm not going to name anybody here, but they rely on a UK supplier for their backlights because they say much better quality. To which I ask the question, where do you think he's getting them from? You don't buy Panasonics for you don't buy backlights or edge-lit lights, as this is, for a Panasonic TV from Panasonic. And even if you did, where do you think Panasonic get them from? They may not get them from the same Chinese suppliers that are on AliExpress, but they're still from China. But anyway, I was convinced to get a set of backlights for this TV from a local supplier instead of going to AliExpress, and I have. And I'm going to stick them in here, and I think Mike will probably turn up in a second and give me a helping hand. This is a quality TV. It's made well. It's an LED TV. It may look like a plasma because of the size of the boards in there, but it isn't, and it's a well-made TV. It's a typical Panasonic from the days of why use 2 screws when you can use 102. And believe me when I tell you that this TV is full of screws. Look at the little tweeters here. You may have noticed that this particular TV's got a subwoofer to give the bass, and it's got those little tweeters at the bottom, and I bet you they sound really nice. So there's a lot of screws to get out here because there's cover on top of cover on top of cover. The subwoofer doesn't have to come out, but this is the screen. So if I were to buy backlights from China for this, I would be able to get a set for about 10 quid. But I've decided for the first time in repairing that I'm going to use a local supplier. And they convince me to use themselves because they say that the backlights in here have been changed by Panasonic. It's the same LED strip, but they've changed the plug and socket to Panasonic specs. I've never heard that before. Had a word with my boss. He's never heard of that before. But if that's what they say, I want to make sure, because I don't want to wait for the backlights to take 2 weeks to come from China and then realise I've got the wrong plug and socket and I've been made to look a fool off. So I've paid full price for a set of backlights for here, which was £40 plus VAT. That's a trade full price. I think the full price is around about £70 if you're buying them from direct and you're not trade. As you can probably tell, I'm just speeding this up now as I take all the bits out. So this is a Panasonic LED TV which has gone into a one blink code. As I mentioned, it's 10 years old. So I think the fact that this TV has lasted 10 years on the same edge-lit strip is pretty good. And we're going to stick a brand new one in. You'll probably see, and I just have to point something out to you, that I wasn't intentionally making videos today. It's just that I always film, as you know, and I suddenly thought, and I looked back on today and thought, do you know, those 3 jobs were quite interesting that we did today. And there's a couple of them that have got connections to sets that I've done in the past, or at least I've done the initial diagnose video, so I really should go back, check the footage, and maybe stick them together. And that's what I'm doing. So don't expect it to be the usual multi-camera job and me with my microphone commentating as I go along. I'm just doing a voiceover on these. But you can tell, you can see all the screws and everything's got to come off. And it does come off. You have to be gentle. The other thing you will notice in a second with this being an edge-lit set, and I have mentioned this before, and it really is a golden rule, and I broke my golden rule on an edge-lit set, I think it was last week. When you replace backlights, edge-lit strips on an edge-lit set, wear gloves. Sounded like a headmaster then, didn't I? But wear gloves every single time, because if you get your fingerprints, which are easy to come off, and go onto the glass, it will cause a smudge, and you won't get them off. It's no good trying to clean it with alcohol. It's no good trying to clean it with some sort of foam glass cleaner. You will just smudge it and make it worse. The only thing you can do is wear gloves, handle the glass part in particular with extra care, otherwise you will regret it. I'm only mentioning that because you'll notice that I'm wearing, it looks like, well, the gloves look like I'm doing the dishes, but I'm wearing gloves to protect the screen for this one. On backlights, not so much. You can get fingerprints on the screen from time to time, but they don't show up. But you get fingerprints on the glass, which goes just behind the screen, and it looks like the screen has got dirt marks, smudge marks on it, and especially on a bright scene, you will have ruined the picture. And you can't really clean them off. And who wants to take a TV to bits again just to do that? But anyway, let's move on. Let's get this new set of backlights in, and I'll let you know my thoughts on how the day went of me buying these backlights from a reputable local source. So the first thing you're going to notice in a second, and you can probably see it just to the left of the screen, the set of backlights we're replacing comes complete with heatsink. It's not just an LED strip. It's got a metal heatsink built into it. Now, we're taking off the large top metal strip, heatsink, sorry, and it's being a real pain. And I do remember doing this on certain sets before. It's got about 20 screws in. You get 18 out, and there are 2 of them that are just jammed in there. And we got it down to just 1 screw. But for love nor money would this flipping last screw come out. And it meant we had to bring out drastic measures. In fact, in all the time that I've made videos for YouTube about fixing TVs, and most of the jobs have been backlights, I don't think I've ever had to get out the Dremel. But on this particular occasion, we just had to cut a little indentation in the screw so we could get a normal screwdriver in there to get the last bit out. But, oh my goodness, what a pain it was. It took us some time to do this. Just bear this in mind if you get one of these sets. Remember, it's a TH42. I'm doing this by memory. TX42E6B. That's what it is. The E5B is fine. It's got backlights in there, and it's an LG panel. This is an LG panel, but this is edge-lit. The backlit one is easy to do. The edge-lit one, well, as you can see, we're struggling. And in just a second, that flipping Dremel will have to come out. It kind of gets so frustrating that in a second we just see, you can see it's wobbling there with just 1 screw. We just suddenly think for a second, pure madness, well, I wonder if we just get the strip of backlights out and not take the big heatsink out, if we can get the other one to fit over the top. It's madness. It's just drastic measures. And we suddenly thought, no, we need a cup of tea and we need that Dremel and we need to try and just force it out. You'd think it'd be easy getting one last screw out, but this was an absolute pain. No good telling us in the comments, oh, you could use a heat gun. Oh, you could use a soldering iron. We tried everything, and this was a real pain. But the Dremel came in handy. Now, of course, I say Dremel. Most of you would have picked up on the fact that it's not a Dremel. It's a cheap Chinese version of a Dremel, which I think cost me 20 quid. I don't think I've ever used this in the past. I think Mike's used it a couple of times on certain jobs, just to help get screws out if and when you need it. But I've never bothered. It's just been at the back of my workshop. But funnily enough, we needed it today. I'm really glad, and it was a coincidence, I started on this TV by myself. I'm glad that Mike turned up, because this would have been one of those jobs that you get halfway through and no amount of money would have been good enough. You would have just struggled, screws would have got stuck in, and as if that wasn't bad enough, even though now we've got the main heatsink out and we're taking the old faulty edgelit strip out and we're just going to stick the new one back in and then put the heatsink back in. That's not the end of my problems. The camera angle doesn't quite show what's going off with my hand here, but I'm now just trying to plug the cable in. Just trying to plug the cable in to get the lights working. And I can't do it. So again, I hand it over to Mike, and he says, I'll do it. But he couldn't do it. Bear in mind a conversation that I had with you about 5 minutes ago. I bought this set of lights because I was told that if you just buy the set for the panel, you will get the LG set, which doesn't have the correct connector on the back. It doesn't fit. Well, guess what, UK light supplier? There's both of us struggling with this here, trying to put it in, and it's a couple of millimetres too wide. But we still keep pushing. We still keep pushing, and it doesn't go in. And Mike's one of these guys that just says, well, we'll cut it. Pair of scissors and we'll cut it. Now, I don't like doing that, but of course at the back of my mind I'm thinking, I don't think we've got a choice. So Mike decides to get a pair of scissors out. He also looks at the connection on the old one, and they do look pretty much identical, but the new one is slightly smaller, only by a couple of millimetres. So we have to go to drastic measures and we have to cut it. And at this stage, I'm pretty furious because it was obvious these are exactly the same backlights, or edgelit strip, that I would have bought from AliExpress for a tenner. But I've paid 40 quid plus VAT. I was told it would be a 48-hour delivery. It wasn't. It's taken a week to get to me. I've bought from China before and had them quicker than a week. Not often, but sometimes you do get them quicker than a week. Normally it's quicker than 2 weeks. So the fact that we had to get a pair of scissors out here and cut the plug down to size so it fits in the socket, I just didn't think was right. I hate doing things like that. I like things to work properly. Don't like cutting things down. Don't like using tape. Don't like using Dremels to get parts out. I think it's pretty much a bad show. But on this occasion, I just can't wait any longer because the lady's been without her TV. She's got one of our loan sets for the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to have this TV back at the weekend. I'm just going to be testing it out for the next 24 hours to make sure that the lights stay on and everything's okay, and then she'll get it back. So we decide eventually to cut the plug and socket down to size, stick it in, and hope that everything just makes a connection, because when you're cutting down to size, you're not too sure that all the contacts are going to match up, bearing in mind there's going to be, hang on, how many segments have we got there? We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's going to be 5 lives and 1 ground. So, there's going to be 5 contacts, and you only have to be half a millimetre to the right or the left, and it ain't going to work. So cutting them down to size, as we are now doing, proves to be a bit of a pain in the backside job. But we stick it in, and then before we go any further, we just decide to give it a test just to see if the strip will light up. Now, of course, they were flickering a little bit on the camera, but that's just a camera thing. The strip was absolutely fine. We didn't have to adjust anything. We just got lucky with a pair of scissors. Not too sure how to handle that. I want to go back and complain to the company, but you've got to be careful. Sometimes you come across as a bit of a moaner. But the fact that they told me that I ought to buy from them and not from China, because you've got to be careful with the plug and socket, and they sent me one with the wrong plug on it. Does make me want to do a bit of a complaint, but I'm not built like that. Anyway, we put it back together. It's a lengthy process, taking it apart and putting it back together, because there's so many covers that have to go on, and the T-Con's got a cover, and then the T-Con cover's got a cover, and there are cover all around the edges. But eventually we get there, put it back together, and it works like a dream. Well, as you can see now, I'm doing a test behind me as I do this little voiceover. So there's a live bit. I think it's Amy Winehouse on Top of the Pops 4 tonight, or BBC 4 tonight. So I'm just listening and watching that as I do the voiceover on this, and it seems to be working fine. So the TV is repaired, but it is frustrating. I wonder if you've come across this before. I just don't get the fact that shouldn't buy from China, should buy from the UK, because they're better quality. As far as I know, and I don't know much, but the UK wholesalers get theirs from China. There's not a special factory that just deals with somebody else. There just isn't. But maybe you've come across this before. But the TV's working fine, and that's part one of a day in the life of a TV engineer done. The others will be a bit quicker, and I don't drone on so much, I promise. Actually, no, I won't promise.